Hello there. Today we're in Hammelburg, in a castle called Schloss Saaleck. The castle originated back in the 12th century, but was largely destroyed in the 30 Years' War, which is 1630s, I think, 1640s, and was then rebuilt into what we see now today. So what we're seeing is something which is in the region of 400 years old. However, the castle keep, the actual sort of round cylindrical tower, that's part of the original castle. So that's now approaching 800 years old. It's quite an attractive place, quite a romantic place. And I think when you visit a place like this, it's important to kind of, get a feel for it. Here you see me on the left-hand side of this bridge, kind of judging whether this is a good space, whether this is a good moment. From the other side of the bridge, I'm spotting an ideal place to sit, albeit it's a place where if I let a pen roll off the side, I'm in trouble because there's a drop down to the fields below. So I think this is the great view. It has the convenience of a seat position, and it's interesting to see through the arch, and of course seeing that original castle keep. So I've chosen a sheet of paper from my mixed bag of papers, and I'm starting with a quick pencil sketch. I never really show the pencil stage because the whole point of the pencil drawing is it has to be as faint as possible. It's only really there to sort of give myself some guidelines to make sure that I don't worry about the drawing fitting on the page. But it really is to be as light as possible, as faint as possible, and as quick as possible. You don't want to feel as if you're drawing the drawing twice. That just ends up being a bit redundant. You want to feel as if the colour or the ink line, whatever you start with, is the first iteration of that drawing. So I'm starting here with the Indigraph pen, and I'd already done a drawing in Hammelburg earlier in that day, and that was done the other way around, using colour first and black line later. So I had actively made the decision to invert that for this drawing, just to kind of, be interesting. And I enjoyed using this pen, which had a flexible nib, and you can see I'm really sort of applying pressure to get a variation in line, and that's really a response to the sort of stoniness of this castle, its cragginess, if I can use that word, where there's so much variation in the stone. I wanted to pick that up in the variation in the line, and it's quite a fun thing to do. I'm straight into the blue sky, which I often do because it makes me happy. It's nice to start the drawing in that way that feels as if there's already kind of great impact, even though I've been drawing a long time and I'm no longer embarrassed about people coming over. It's nice for them to see the blue sky first, rather than just doing a little bit of brickwork somewhere. If you start with the sky, it immediately kind of captures the sense of the drawing, and you feel positive immediately, basically. And it was a blue sky day, so it was just being honest to my experience of that day. Here you see my usual method that I really try and use because I think it saves time, which is to pick up a pen and to use that pen in as many different locations as possible without going crazy about it. So you see here with the white that there's multiple points where that white has kind of brought benefit to that drawing. And now when I've picked up the sort of terracotta pen, same thing. I'm applying it in all the different places I can. I think when you're using brush pens like this, so literally you're having to pick up the pen and take off the cap, and you see me here holding the cap in my left hand, you don't want to be getting impatient with yourself, kind of repeatedly picking things up and putting things down again. You want to feel as if there's an efficiency to the process. I mean, the reason for using the pens in the first place is because of efficiency. You can see here that the sun is coming out from behind the clouds quite extremely, casting light on the drawing and light, of course, on the castle itself, radically changing the view, and specifically, obviously, the shadows, but also the temperature of the stone, creating a much warmer look. I never mind that kind of thing. I always think that's kind of interesting. I'm not trying to capture any sort of immediate view. I'm just interested in seeing what I'm seeing and what I want to draw from it. So it never particularly bothers me, although I appreciate it must be odd looking at the video and having the image of that drawing change so radically, but that's just the reality of drawing plein air, drawing out on the street. Something that you can't see is I often wear sunglasses when drawing, which must look very odd to people who walk past me. but it's my way of controlling the amount of glare that comes off the page, specifically in moments of sunlight like this. So as long as the sunglasses aren't too intense, it really helps just to calm the view down, the view of the actual paper, so it doesn't kind of shine back up at you and you don't squint too much, because when you're looking at the page and then looking up and looking at the distance, it can be quite tiring on the eyes, and I find that sunglasses help in that. One of the questions I get asked is about my Indigraph pens, which are such a kind of key part of my drawing process and have been for a few years. The pens I have modified, and it's not something I recommend anybody else do. It's a kind of thing where you have to be not afraid to break the pen by modifying it and making it more yours. The two things I've done really is, firstly, I've added a foam tubing on the outside of the barrel, and that's to thicken the pen, and that's so I can hold the pen at a different position. So I hold it further back towards the end of the pen. This makes it a more relaxed kind of position. It also allows me to detense my hand. I do a lot of drawing, and I have done for a long time, and you can get a strain in your fingers because you're gripping so intensely in order to be so precise. And it really helps to have a change in the way the hand holds the pen, and a sort of more giving surface. The softness of the foam really helps the hand to relax a little bit. The other thing I've done is I've barrel filled the pens, which again I wouldn't recommend anybody else do because it is a dangerous act. You can ruin the pen, as it were. This means that you don't have a cartridge, you don't have a converter, which is another form of containing the ink for the fountain pen. Instead, I've removed all of that and I've simply filled the entirety of the barrel with ink. This is 4 or 5 times the amount of ink that any cartridge can hold. Now, the positive of that is I don't have to fill up my pens very often. They last a huge amount of time, and that means when I'm on a trip like this, I can basically do 15 drawings and never have to refill my pen, which for me is a massive convenience. The negative is that you can get an overly wet nib, it's called. It means that the pen can sometimes burp, can sometimes give more ink than you want it to. Now, I've started with dip pens back in the day, so I'm actually not afraid of having a pen that has too much ink coming from it. Can sometimes get a little kind of bubble of ink coming out. But for me, the convenience of having such a huge amount of ink just outweighs any negative. Here you see me doing one of my classic skylines. This is a kind of affectation, really. It's just creating a sort of dramatic blue line that draws the eye in, that allows you to kind of fill up the page in an interesting way. And that's a compromise I'm fine with. Now, something I wanted to show you here that I think most people don't show is how often when you're drawing you will actually turn the paper, turn the whole drawing around in order to sort of simply make it easier to make the mark in the way the hand naturally moves. I think normally when I would do this, I would cut this image out. I wouldn't film that moment, but I think it's kind of interesting for you to see that the reality is when you're drawing, often you're kind of spinning the paper around, the sketchbook or the pad, in order to just make it easier to make the mark as naturally as possible. There's certain ways the hand wants to move, and you don't want to force the hand into a strange position. And I think probably when you're filming, when most people do a filmed version in the studio, I think there must be an uncomfortableness to that, where they feel as if they shouldn't spin the drawing around for their own convenience. They should keep it straight for the camera's benefit. So I thought it'd be useful for everybody to know it's okay to spin your paper, because that's a natural way of drawing. I ended up spending about 90 minutes on this drawing, more than I intended really. I had a little bit more time than I thought I was going to. So I enjoyed the act of really trying to get into this brickwork and trying to get some of the expressiveness out. So in my usual habit of kind of drawing and then drawing over the top of that drawing, to kind of build layers of complexity and enjoy that act of layering with colours and lines. And it developed quite a sort of complex character by the end that pleased me. It's a bit over the top, but I often like to be a little bit over the top. I think it's a drawing of how I remember the castle, even though I'm standing in front of it, sitting in front of it, rather than a sort of accurate colour reproduction of that castle. It's mine, and it's a pleasant one. This is actually a winery now, And following this drawing, I went off to their wine shop and tried some of their wines. So thank you, Castle, thank you, Saaleck, because that was actually a very pleasant way to finish the day. So here's the finished drawing. Thank you to Hammelburg and Schloss Saaleck, and I hope you've enjoyed watching along, and I'll see you next time.